Leaded gasoline. In 1921, General Motors engineer Thomas Midgley Jr. discovered that adding tetraethyl lead to gasoline eliminated engine knocking, the metallic pinging sound that damaged car engines and reduced performance. This seemed like automotive genius. Lead made engines run smoother, more efficiently, and last longer. The invention transformed the automobile industry. By the 1970s, virtually every car on Earth burned leaded gasoline. Millions of tons of lead particles spewed from exhaust pipes into the air people breathed every day. Lead is a neurotoxin that accumulates in the human body. It damages the brain, nervous system, and organs. Children absorb lead more readily than adults, and even tiny amounts cause permanent cognitive damage, learning disabilities, and behavioral problems. For 50 years, leaded gasoline poisoned entire generations. Studies show that children who grew up during peak leaded gas usage had measurably lower IQs, higher crime rates, and increased rates of ADHD and other developmental disorders. The lead didn't just disappear. It settled into soil, paint, and water supplies, where it continues causing harm today. The same engineer who invented leaded gasoline also created chlorofluorocarbons for refrigeration, which later destroyed the ozone layer. Thomas Midgley Jr. has been called the organism that had the greatest impact on Earth's atmosphere in human history. Thalidomide. In 1957, the German pharmaceutical company Chemie Grünenthal released thalidomide as a sedative and sleep aid. The drug was marketed as completely safe, so safe that it was impossible to overdose on it. Doctors began prescribing it to pregnant women as a treatment for morning sickness. Thalidomide seemed perfect for expectant mothers. It relieved nausea without the drowsiness of other medications. The drug spread rapidly across Europe, Australia, and Canada. In West Germany alone, over 1 million people took thalidomide regularly. The drug interfered with fetal development during a critical window, days 20 to 36 of pregnancy, often before women knew they were pregnant. Thalidomide prevented proper limb formation by blocking the growth of new blood vessels that feed developing arms and legs. Between 1957 and 1961, over 10,000 babies were born with severe limb deformities. Most had phocomelia, a condition where hands and feet attach directly to the torso, with little or no arm or leg development. Many children were born with flipper-like appendages instead of normal limbs. The tragedy was almost entirely preventable. Dr. Frances Kelsey at the FDA refused to approve thalidomide for use in the United States because the company couldn't prove it was safe. Her decision saved thousands of American babies from the same fate. DDT. In 1939, Swiss chemist Paul Hermann Müller discovered that dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane, DDT, killed insects on contact. This seemed like humanity's answer to insect-borne diseases. DDT was cheap to produce, lasted for months after application, and appeared harmless to humans and mammals. During World War II, DDT saved countless lives by killing lice that spread typhus and mosquitoes that carried malaria. The military dusted entire populations with DDT powder. Soldiers sprayed it directly on their skin. The chemical was so trusted that advertisements showed families eating at picnic tables while DDT was being sprayed around them. After the war, DDT became agriculture's miracle weapon. Farmers sprayed it on crops to eliminate pests. Governments used it in massive public health campaigns to eradicate malaria-carrying mosquitoes. DDT seemed to offer a future free from insect-borne disease and crop failure. DDT doesn't break down in the environment. It accumulates in fatty tissues of animals and becomes more concentrated as it moves up the food chain. Birds of prey like eagles and hawks absorbed massive amounts of DDT, which caused their eggshells to become so thin they cracked during incubation. The chemical disrupted ecosystems across the globe. Entire bird populations crashed. DDT was linked to cancer, reproductive problems, and neurological damage in humans. By the 1960s, the same chemical that promised to save lives was poisoning the planet's food webs and driving iconic species toward extinction. The radium craze. In 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie discovered radium, a glowing element that seemed to possess miraculous properties. Early researchers noticed that radium emitted energy continuously without any external power source. This led to wild speculation about radium's potential as a health elixir and cure-all medicine. By the 1920s, entrepreneurs marketed radium as a miracle substance that could restore youth, increase vitality, and cure dozens of ailments. Companies sold radium-laced toothpaste, face cream, chocolate, and suppositories. Wealthy Americans paid premium prices for radium water, regular water stored in radium-lined containers until it became radioactive. The most popular radium product was Radithor, a patent medicine containing radium dissolved in distilled water. Advertisements claimed it cured impotence, mental illness, and dozens of other conditions. The wealthy industrialist Eben Byers consumed 3 bottles daily for 2 years after his doctor recommended it for a broken arm. Radium destroys living tissue at the cellular level. It accumulates in bones and teeth, where it continues emitting radiation for decades. The constant bombardment causes bone cancer, jaw necrosis, and severe anemia. Radium literally makes bones disintegrate from the inside. Ibn Byers became radium's most famous victim. His jaw fell off in pieces. His skull developed holes. He lost most of his teeth and suffered excruciating pain until his death in 1932. A newspaper headline read, "The radium water worked fine until his jaw came off." His remains were so radioactive they had to be buried in a lead-lined coffin. The Bhopal disaster, Union Carbide. In 1969, Union Carbide Corporation built a pesticide plant in Bhopal, India to manufacture Sevin, a chemical designed to protect crops from insects. The facility was part of the Green Revolution, meant to help India achieve food security by increasing agricultural yields. The plant would produce chemicals to feed millions of people. The Bhopal plant manufactured pesticides using methyl isocyanate, MIC, an extremely toxic chemical compound. MIC reacts violently with water, creating deadly gases that attack the respiratory system. Union Carbide's safety protocols required storing MIC in refrigerated tanks with multiple backup systems to prevent contamination. On December 2nd, 1984, water entered a storage tank containing 40 tons of MIC. The chemical reaction generated enormous heat and pressure, creating a toxic cloud that escaped into the atmosphere. The gas was heavier than air, so it hugged the ground as it spread through Bhopal's densely populated neighborhoods. People woke up choking, vomiting, and struggling to breathe. The gas burned their eyes, throats, and lungs. Thousands fled their homes in panic, but many collapsed and died in the streets. Pregnant women suffered miscarriages. Children died in their sleep. The toxic cloud killed approximately 3,800 people within 72 hours. The disaster didn't end with the immediate deaths. Over 15,000 people died from gas-related illnesses in the following years. Hundreds of thousands suffered permanent respiratory damage, blindness, and other health problems. Contaminated groundwater continues poisoning local communities today. The site remains one of the world's most toxic industrial wastelands. Bloodletting, medical leeches. For over 2,000 years, physicians believed that illness resulted from an imbalance of 4 bodily fluids called humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. According to this theory, most diseases were caused by excess blood, which created heat and corruption in the body. The logical treatment was bloodletting, deliberately removing blood to restore balance and health. Medieval and Renaissance doctors used several methods to extract blood from patients. They made incisions with sharp instruments called lancets, applied heated glass cups to create suction, or attached medicinal leeches to drink blood directly from the skin. Physicians calculated precise amounts of blood to remove based on the patient's age, constitution, and symptoms. Bloodletting was prescribed for almost every medical condition. Doctors drained blood to treat fevers, headaches, inflammation, mental illness, and even broken bones. George Washington's physicians removed nearly 40% of his blood while treating a throat infection, a procedure that likely hastened his death. Removing large quantities of blood weakens the immune system and reduces the body's ability to fight infection. Bloodletting often made patients sicker by causing anemia, shock, and organ failure. The practice was especially deadly for people who were already ill or injured, precisely when they needed their blood most. The medical establishment clung to bloodletting despite mounting evidence of its dangers. As late as the 1800s, physicians trained at prestigious medical schools continued bleeding patients regularly. The practice only declined when doctors began using scientific methods to test treatments and discovered that patients recovered faster without bloodletting. The Challenger O-ring design. In 1981, NASA launched the Space Shuttle program to make space travel routine and affordable. The shuttles were designed to be reusable spacecraft that could carry astronauts and cargo to orbit, then return to Earth, like airplanes. NASA promised that shuttles would fly frequently and safely, opening space to regular human activity. The shuttle's solid rocket boosters were manufactured in segments and assembled at Kennedy Space Center. Each joint between segments was sealed with 2 rubber O-rings designed to prevent hot gases from escaping during launch. The O-rings had to maintain perfect seals under extreme pressure and temperature conditions. Morton Thiokol, the company that built the boosters, discovered that O-rings became brittle and lost elasticity in cold weather. Engineers found evidence of O-ring damage on previous flights and warned that temperatures below 53 degrees Fahrenheit could cause seal failure. They recommended against launching in cold conditions. On January 28, 1986, the temperature at Kennedy Space Center was 36 degrees, far below the safe operating range for O-rings. Despite urgent warnings from engineers, NASA managers decided to proceed with the launch. They were under pressure to maintain the shuttle schedule and had grown accustomed to accepting higher risks. 73 seconds after liftoff, hot gases burned through the primary O-ring seal in the right solid rocket booster. The escaping flames severed the shuttle's external fuel tank, causing a massive explosion explosion that killed all 7 crew members. The disaster was entirely preventable. Engineers had identified the exact failure mode that destroyed Challenger. The Titanic's watertight compartments. In 1912, the RMS Titanic represented the pinnacle of naval engineering. The ship's designers at Harland & Wolff included an advanced safety feature: 16 watertight compartments separated by massive steel bulkheads. These compartments could be sealed instantly from the bridge if the ship struck an obstacle or began taking on water. The compartment system was designed so that Titanic could survive flooding in any 4 adjacent compartments and still remain afloat. Naval architects calculated that no conceivable accident could breach more than 4 compartments simultaneously. This led to Titanic being marketed as practically unsinkable, a ship that could survive any disaster. The watertight bulkheads had a fatal design flaw. They extended only partway up the ship's hull, stopping well below the upper decks. The bulkheads were like walls in a giant ice cube tray. They could contain water up to a certain level, but if that level was exceeded, water would spill over the top into adjacent compartments. On April 14, 1912, Titanic struck an iceberg that opened a 300-foot gash along the ship's starboard side. The impact breached 6 compartments, 2 more than the ship could survive. As the forward compartments filled with water, the ship's bow sank lower, allowing water to spill over the bulkheads into the next compartments. The safety system that was supposed to save the ship actually ensured its destruction. The watertight compartments trapped water in the forward sections, making the bow heavier and accelerating the sinking process. If the compartments had been open, water might have spread more evenly throughout the ship, potentially keeping it afloat longer and saving more lives. The Chernobyl safety test. In 1986, engineers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine planned to conduct a safety test on reactor unit 4. The test was designed to prove that the reactor could continue operating safely during a power outage by using residual steam to keep cooling systems running until backup generators activated. The test required reducing the reactor's power output to simulate emergency conditions. Soviet-designed RBMK reactors became unstable at low power levels due to a phenomenon called the positive void coefficient. As power decreased, the reactor became harder to control and more prone to sudden power surges. On April 26, operators began reducing reactor power for the test, but the power dropped too quickly and fell to dangerous levels. Instead of aborting the test, shift supervisor Anatoly Dyatlov ordered his team to continue. They disabled multiple safety systems and withdrew most of the control rods to bring power back up. The reactor entered an extremely unstable state. At 1:23 a.m., operators pressed the emergency shutdown button, but it was too late. The control rods jammed partway down, and the reactor's power output spiked to 100 times normal levels in seconds. The massive power surge created steam explosions that blew off the reactor's 1,000-ton concrete lid. The explosion and resulting fire released radioactive material equivalent to 400 times the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The safety test, meant to prove the reactor's reliability, instead caused the worst nuclear disaster in history. 31 people died immediately, and thousands more died from radiation-related illnesses. The accident contaminated vast areas of Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia that remain uninhabitable today.